entertaining, all right.
I told him you fire me occasionally.
And who do we have here?
This is Orion. He's our latest club-trained bird. He's a barred owl.
Could you spell that?
B-A-R-R-E-D.
Bear. He's been barred from the.
Barred.
He's like, okay. How?
Bars
What
on
is?
his chest.
Because what?
Like the bar, the feather, the markings on his chest look like bars from a jail cell or something.
Oh, okay. That's how he got his. It's a he.
Yeah, he's a boy.
What's his story?
He came to us about 6 months ago. When he was about 6 months old, he had been found on the ground as a fledgling, and one of the rehabbers from Wildlife Center of Venice put him back in the nest. And unbeknownst to them, the people that lived in the house where he was found were luring him out of the tree and feeding him. And after a couple of weeks of this, they called the Wildlife Center of Venice back again and said, the bird won't go back in the tree now. It's like, yeah, well, yeah.
Well, they meant well, it sounds.
They meant well, but...
And why should people not do what they did?
The parents were there, and they were taking perfectly good care of the bird. And he would have been a perfectly happy little bird, had mom and dad taken care of him, fed him, taught him how to hunt, he would have been okay. But because the people lured him out of the tree and fed him, he got habituated to people. So he's not necessarily imprinted, whereas he thinks he's a human, but he's habituated, so he's lost his fear of people. So if he were out in the wild and he got hungry, he would fly down to people because he thinks that's where food comes from. Thank you.
Ooh. Okay.
So he doesn't understand how to hunt for himself, how to feed himself.
And he hasn't learned how to use the bathroom yet.
I think he did a fine job there. He got that down.
Not in the toilet. He's just.
So he's, we when they got him back when he was still fairly young, they put him with some non-releasable barred owls that provide foster care for baby bards to try to wild him back up. But the damage had already been done. He'll never know how to be a wild bird. So luckily we were able to get a permit to keep him as an education bird, and he's very good at that.
He's about 6 months old?
We've had him for 6 months. He was about 6 months when he came in. February 14th was his birthday. He's our little Valentine baby.
A fledgling means what?
When they're first hatched, they're called hatchlings, and then they're covered in down, and then they start getting some of their adult feathers as fledglings right before they fledge and are able to fly. Barred owls have an interesting stage in between. They're called branching. They are actually able to climb up and down trees before they can fly. They use their talons and their beak, and they climb up, they climb out on branches, and they climb between branches, flapping their wings a little bit ineffectively, but it helps keep their balance. So it's kind of a unique feature of these owls, but it's also what got him into trouble to begin with, because he would climb down out of the tree and then climb back up to the nest. And eventually he decided, well, I don't want to climb back up there. These people are feeding me. I'm going to stay down here.
What is his expected lifespan?
About 15 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is this a male or a female?
He's a male.
It's a male.
Is 15 years in captivity as opposed to in the wild?
Around 12 to 15 years in the wild. So in captivity it could be considerably longer, sure.
He's going to be a permanent resident then?
He is a resident here at Peace River Wildlife
He can't be
Center.
returned to the wild.
Right.
Because he's lost his animal instincts.
Exactly, yeah. All of the birds on display here are permanent residents. The ones that are in rehab to be released, we're not by law allowed to display them to people.
It's better for them to stay in the wild than to be as nice as the accommodations are here.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that happened for a reason, and that was because of human intervention.
Yeah.
What could have been done differently to prevent him from losing his fear of humans and becoming habituated?
When people know of a nest in their area, in their yard, and it's natural to want to pay attention to them and watch them, but do so from a distance. Do it from inside, looking out the windows. Be very careful not to let the birds know that you're there, because sometimes if you're making too much of a ruckus around the nest, you might actually frighten the parents away, and they won't come back. But if they are coming back to feed their babies, just watch them from a distance. Try not to intervene.
And you should feed them cat food.
Absolutely, do not feed them anything.
Okay,
Yeah.
why not?
Because we're not feeding them the appropriate things, and I have this conversation at least once a week. Great blue herons do not eat hot dogs. And the people will say, oh, sure they do. I feed them to them all the time. I say, yes, they will eat hot dogs, but it's not on their natural diet. And if you feed these things full of things that are not good for them.
Well, frankly, I'm not sure the hot dogs are good for us either.
Exactly, they're not. You happy now? Silly boy.
He's not injured in any
He's
way,
not,
and
no.
he has the ability to fly.
He can fly, yep. And he's a year old, so he's kind of a toddler right now. And he decides, I don't want to do this anymore. He thinks he can just take off.
He's a little rambunctious.
He's learning. But yeah, I mean, if we feed these animals full of inappropriate food, then they don't hunt what they should be eating. And they can actually starve to death even though you're feeding them.
And so in this case and in others, when you find a young owl or other creature and it seems like it's in distress, but maybe it isn't really, and you should just, how do you know when to call someone like the Peace River Wildlife Center or some other?
What we normally recommend is, when you find an animal, monitor it from afar for a while. If mom is coming around, it's fine. With the baby birds, we have to distinguish, is it a nestling, which means it doesn't have any feathers. It can either be completely bald or just have downy feathers, or is it a fledgling, that it's got some down and some normal feathers. It's normal for a fledgling to be on the ground for a while. If it's a nestling, we want to get it back into the nest. If you can't find the nest, you can make a nest with a little margarine container or something, poke some holes in the bottom in case it rains. We don't want them to drown. Put some grass in there, or maybe a nest fell out of a tree, you can put it in there, and then put it back up in the tree as high as you can.
But wait, if you touch it and you're a human, then the mom will smell it on your scent. Is that true?
Reject the baby. That is absolutely not true.
Not true.
No. Those mamas love their babies just like we love our babies. The nurse touched my baby when I was in the hospital, and I didn't reject her either. These mamas love their babies. Most birds have no sense of smell whatsoever. So vultures are one of the only birds that can smell at all. So it's
Really?
totally not true that birds are going to smell you on their baby and reject them. No.
So it's okay to carefully return a nestling.
Turn it to the nest. If it's a fledgling,
Just leave it alone.
watch, make sure if mom's coming down and feeding it until it's ready to fly in a couple of days, it's perfectly natural. If you've got a cat or dog at your house that you're afraid of, put it on leash or don't let it outside for a couple of days is all these fledglings need until they're able to fly and,
What if you live in an area where there's other wildlife like bobcats or coyotes and that sort of thing?
Well, it's nature, and that's one of the things that we, ask people. We'll get bunnies or baby birds that a snake has started to attack, and they've wrested out of the snake's mouth. And unfortunately, normally that baby bird or that bunny's going to die anyway, and now
Right.
the snake's either going to go hungry or have to kill another one. So
Right.
if it's a natural type phenomena, as hard as it is, we ask people just to leave them alone.
Do you have any questions that you want to ask? Are you sure? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is that a barred owl?